Some days I hate this job. Okay, these days, there are a lot of days I hate this job. These are difficult days in the newspaper business. That's another story, for another day. The story this day is about the rock that I have carried around in my stomach for the better part of the last 2 decades. That's how long I have been editor of this newspaper. It's that queasy feeling I get in the pit of my stomach every time I get wind of a story that I know is going to be big news, and big controversy. Advertisement. You don't get into this business to make friends. Or to make money, for that matter. It is one of the reasons journalists, including this one, refrain for the most part from joining a lot of organizations such as Rotary, Kiwanis or the Lions. We don't run for local office. We don't join a lot of community advisory boards. I am not even a member of the Delaware County Press Club. For the most part, this is to avoid any conflict of interest. We are supposed to be watchdogs, not affected by personal relationships. That's easier said than done, and a lot less painful. I do, however, speak often to exactly such groups. I talk about what I do for a living and the convulsive changes that have rocked the newspaper world. They invariably want to know how they can get good stories about themselves, their towns and their businesses into the newspaper. I am more than happy to oblige them whenever possible, and whenever it merits such coverage. But I also tell them something else. I also assure them that is a very good chance that I or someone else from the newspaper may be calling on them one day when the news is not so good. All of which is kind of a preface to saying that the rock that resides in my stomach got a little bigger over the weekend. St. Joseph's Parish in Downingtown is in the news again. You can read about it here. I happen to be a parishioner. More than that, I consider the man at the center of this latest controversy a friend. I still do. I first met Monsignor Joe McClune when he was pastor at St. Catherine Drexel in Chester. After his arrival at St. Joe's, one of his first tasks was overseeing the construction of a new church. St. Joseph's is the largest parish in Chester County, even after a chunk of it was split off to form St. Elizabeth's a few years back. It is the second largest parish in the entire archdiocese. The old church, where I happened to get married, was bursting at the seams. I still wondered about what that money could have been used for instead of building a massive new facility. It didn't exactly soothe my feelings that they knocked the old church down. The only still standing there is the bell tower that sits in the middle of the new parking lot. I used to kid the Monsignor all the time. You came here from St. Catherine Drexel in Chester. You think we really need a $10 million church? He was always wise enough not to respond. It was first announced that Monsignor McClune was taking an extended leave of absence back in February. At the time it struck me as kind of odd that not much information was being released. Next week, I imagine in an attempt to tamp down rumors in the parish, it was announced that the leave had nothing to do with children. Yeah, I guess that's the kind of world we live in today. I made a few inquiries into how he was doing, but didn't really think that much about it, aside from that little gnawing in my gut, a result of too damn many years as a newspaper editor, that told me something wasn't right. Last Friday I got a phone call about 1 p.m. Suddenly that little knot in my stomach became the size of a beach ball. Yes, there was indeed more to the Monsignor's leave than we first knew. It was going to be addressed at every Mass at St. Joe's this weekend. It was not pretty. We had a reporter in the 7:30 Mass to hear the remarks delivered by Monsignor Thomas Dunleavy, who had been named parish administrator after Monsignor McClune first took his leave. In a selfish kind of way, hearing what he told the faithful was a bit of a relief. I am not above telling you I had wondered exactly how we were going to cover the story, how much detail we would provide. It turned out the archdiocese did not leave a lot to the imagination. As I said, it wasn't pretty. Ironically, Monsignor McClune was brought into St. Joseph's in the aftermath of criminal charges being filed against the former pastor, the Rev. William Lynn. He faced charges stemming from the grand jury investigation in Philadelphia into abuse of children by priests. Lynn was not charged with any abuse. Instead, he was charged with endangering the welfare of children for allegedly moving problem priests into other parishes without notifying parishioners. He was convicted of 1 count. That conviction was thrown out in 2015. He is currently awaiting retrial. At the time I wrote several blog items and columns concerning the scandal that had enveloped the archdiocese, and St. Joe's. Let's just say it was not especially appreciated by many of the faithful who remained loyal to Rev. Lynn, in particularly one woman who sent me an email and a request to stay there in Delaware County where you belong. Like I said, you don't go into this business to make friends. This weekend was certainly proof of that. A salute to our best. Not because we finally got a real dose of spring fever with temperatures rocketing into the 80s on Saturday. And certainly not because winter seemed to return with a vengeance Sunday with a cold, nasty drizzle that made Saturday seem like a distant memory. No, this was the weekend where we present two very special packages to our readers. On Sunday we saluted the members of the Delco High Q team. That is one member from each team that competes in the nation's oldest scholastic quiz competition. Today we followed up that report with the 19 winners of this year's Excellence in Education Awards. All of this results from a meeting I held in my office more than a decade ago. John Unangst was head of the Franklin Mint Federal Credit Union. Harry Jameson was boss at the Delaware County Intermediate Unit. The credit union had just stepped up to become the primary corporate partner of High Q, and John was looking to do something special. His vision turned into an annual banquet honoring High Q. It was called Partners in Education. But that was not really what John and Harry wanted to discuss. They were intrigued by the Delco teams the newspaper selected at the conclusion of every high school sports season. They wanted to adopt it for the High Q team and honor the winners at the banquet. They asked if I was interested. I think the smile on my face told them all they needed to know. It has always been my goal to offer more coverage for kids who excel in the classroom, not necessarily on the athletic playing fields. Here at the Daily Times, we take our role as Delaware County's sports authority pretty seriously. But every time I bragged about how well we covered high school sports, my wife would ask why we did not offer similar coverage for academic excellence. Good point, don't you think? The Delco High Q team is one way we've addressed that issue. We run the headshot and biographical information each Delco High Q member, along with a feature story. The Delco High Q team is not selected by us, but rather by their teammates. A few years after he kicked off the Partners in Education dinner, John decided to add another aspect, honoring the people who were responsible for a lot of that academic excellence. This was started the Excellence in Teaching Awards. All 19 of them, along with their headshots, appear in today's newspaper. Unfortunately, this year's banquet, set to be held Thursday night at the Drexelbrook, will come with a bit of sadness. John Unangst will not be there. We lost John a few months ago. The Delco High Q team and the Excellence in Teaching Awards are testament to what John meant to the Delaware County education community. I will always be grateful for that visit. And I'll be thinking of you Thursday night, John. 60 years in the news business. I've been in the newspaper racket for 40 years. I still remember the thrill of picking up a copy of the Daily, the campus newspaper at the University of Colorado in Boulder, and seeing my name screaming from the lead at the top of the fold. I wrote a story on an appearance on campus by Alan Back, the white California man who set off a legal firestorm when he challenged affirmative action policies and claimed reverse discrimination in the admissions policies of that state's universities. That was my first real newspaper gig. I was what is called in the business a stringer. In other words, a freelancer, someone who gets paid by the story, as opposed to being on staff, when you receive a weekly salary. Barbara Ormsby knows a little bit about being a stringer. After all, she's been doing it for almost 60 years. That's correct. 6 decades. Barbara is one of our longtime loyal core of correspondents, those stringers who become our eyes and ears in the community. For Barbara, that meant Ridley Park, Eddystone, Morton and the Ridley School District. If something was going on in those towns, Barbara knew about it. It was my honor recently to actually get out of the office and attend a Delaware County Press Club luncheon to honor the woman we lovingly refer to as Barbie-O. A lot has changed in the newspaper business in the 4 decades I have been toiling in it. One thing has not. People like Barbara Ormsby, and the rest of the stringers we use to cover Delaware County's 49 municipalities and 15 public school districts, to say nothing of the private schools, are an essential part of community journalism. One of the things that has changed in this business are the economic frailties of a system that has put increasing pressure on us to reduce costs. One area where that is evident is in the reduced use of stringers like Barb. As the Washington Post now observes, democracy dies in darkness. I can tell you that it is getting darker out here every day. I don't think we realize what we are in danger of losing. People like Barbara Ormsby are simply irreplaceable. I talk about it in today's weekly letter from the editor. That's a pretty good batting average. It's not so hot, literally, when it comes to the weather. On Saturday, amid the glory of a return of 80-degree weather, I rediscovered the backyard. Call it the reverse of the agony. It was ecstasy of being outside and working in the yard, the agony the next morning of discovering I was indeed another year older, and these 62-year-old muscles had not been used in a while. I don't know what was more miserable, my creaking old body, or the return of winter. After that one day of sunshine and a high in the mid-80s, Sunday reverted to our endless winter, with a cold, wind-driven drizzle that went right to the bone. This morning I think Noah is out there building the ark. It is absolutely teeming out there at times. Here's the full forecast.